Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Pat.
And I'm Jessie.
Have you ever felt like there's this invisible thread, something from your family's past, pulling you into patterns you maybe can't quite escape?
Or, that feeling inside, like a tug of war where different parts of you seem to want totally opposite things.
Exactly. Well, today we're taking a deep dive into internal family systems therapy, or IFS. It's this really insightful way of looking at how our inner world gets shaped by those echoes from our ancestors.
Yeah, and we're going to explore how the unhealed wounds of the past, what we often call transgenerational trauma, how they continue to influence us today.
And crucially, how we can maybe finally begin to, rewrite those stories.
So our mission today is really to help you understand IFS, its core ideas, but also to grasp its really fresh perspective compared to maybe other therapies you've heard of.
Right.
We'll unpack this powerful idea of transgenerational trauma and hopefully offer some practical insights, for navigating your own inner world and understanding your family dynamics with a bit more empathy, maybe some warmth.
Yeah, definitely. We've gathered some really incredible sources for this deep dive. We've got personal stories from Reddit, therapeutic worksheets that kind of guide you through things, insightful articles from Psychology Today, and just really powerful accounts from therapists and, regular people too.
So yeah, get ready to explore what it means to be this kind of connected network of different versions of you.
And how that network, plugs into the much bigger family system.
Exactly.
So that idea of the internal pull, the tug of war, it really resonates, I think.
Yeah.
How does IFS actually think about these distinct forces inside us?
It's fascinating, really. IFS suggests that our minds are, genuinely made up of multiple parts, different aspects of ourselves.
Okay.
The founder, Richard C. Schwartz, he developed this whole approach based on the idea that these parts, they aren't literal things inside you.
Right. Not like little people.
No, exactly. But they are powerful metaphors. Each part has its own views, its own intentions, its own beliefs, And they've developed over time, often actually, in response to past experiences or maybe trauma. They act like protective mechanisms.
Okay, like protectors.
Yeah, think of it like the characters in Disney's Inside Out.
Oh, yeah. Good analogy.
Right. Each emotion, each character is sort of like a part that can, take the wheel, and they're trying to help you in their own way.
Yeah, it feels like a really big shift from, say, a purely medical model. It's suggesting these struggles aren't just like random chemical imbalances.
Exactly. Someone on Reddit put it so well, I thought. They said IFS isn't about some stupid chemical imbalance, but it's more like seeing it as a perfect balance of psychological impulses trying to protect you from a gargantuan, painful truth.
Wow, that's powerful.
Isn't it? The insight there is that these parts, they aren't problems to get rid of.
Right.
They're actually protective systems inside us. And once you understand them, once you engage with them with some compassion, they can shift. They can go from being things that hold you back to being, allies.
So the focus changes then.
Completely. It shifts to understanding what caused your brain to be calibrated that way in the first place. What happened?
Okay, so given this internal landscape, all these parts, how does IFS sort of categorize them? Are there main types we should know about?
Yeah, the model usually talks about 3 primary types. It can be helpful to think of them as different members of your internal team. Each one has a really crucial role.
Okay, like who?
So first, you have the exiles. These are the vulnerable parts, often younger parts of us that carry the emotional pain, the difficult memories, the tough emotions.
Hurt ones.
Exactly. They usually get pushed away from our awareness, to protect us from feeling that pain again. They hold the hurt, the shame, the fear, stuff that was just too much to handle when it happened.
Got it. Exiles. Who else is on the team?
Then there are the managers. Now, these are our proactive protectors. Their job is basically to stop those exiles from getting triggered.
Okay. Keeping the lid on.
Yeah, exactly. And to maintain a sense of control, safety in our lives. They often show up as things like perfectionism or maybe being really self-critical, rigidity sometimes, even overachievement.
I recognize some of those.
Right. They're essentially our coping strategies, like a neurodiverse person masking their authentic self to fit in. That's a kind of manager part. They try to keep everything orderly, predict problems, control the environment. Sometimes, honestly, it's exhausting.
I can imagine. So exiles, managers.
Yeah.
What's the third type?
And finally, we have the firefighters. These guys are reactive. They jump in when an exile does get activated, and those intense emotions start bubbling up.
Okay, like the emergency crew.
Exactly like that. They act like emergency responders. They try to distract us or numb us out, sometimes through, impulsive or compulsive behaviors, things like substance abuse, binge eating, maybe even self-harm in extreme cases.
But maybe less extreme things, too.
Oh, absolutely. Less extreme examples could be just binge watching TV for days on end or getting lost in working constantly, overworking.
Yeah, right, distraction.
Yeah. And while they do provide temporary relief, the really crucial thing to understand here is that even the behaviors that seem destructive, at their core, these firefighter actions are usually desperate attempts, sometimes pretty brilliant attempts, actually, to get relief from overwhelming pain. Understanding that really shifts how you see them. You move from, self-blame to compassion.
It sounds like these parts could definitely get into some pretty intense conflicts inside.
Okay.
I can sort of picture my own firefighter wanting to override my manager when I get stressed out.
That's a very relatable dynamic. And yes, they absolutely can clash. Problems often arise when there's this subconscious conflict going on. Maybe a really critical perfectionist manager fighting with an overwhelmed part that just wants to check out.
Yeah, okay.
The ultimate goal in IFS, then, is to help establish a more harmonious relationship between all these parts, helping them understand each other, work together instead of fighting, all under the guidance of, a core resource.
Okay, so if these are the parts, what's this core resource you mentioned? Is there a part of us that's, just us? Like the real me underneath all that internal noise?
Yes, that's exactly it. This is the self with a capital S. It's seen as your true essence, your core being.
Ah.
And it's characterized by these inherent qualities, things like curiosity, compassion, wisdom, calmness. It's like this natural center of stability inside.
A stable core.
Yeah, providing guidance, healing, and leadership within your internal system. The goal is for this core self to kind of take charge gently and interact with all the parts from a place of understanding and compassion. Like a really wise and kind leader who genuinely sees and values every single member of their team, even the difficult ones.
And the self, you said it's this core essence.
Mm.
What are the key qualities? You mentioned a few, but what makes it such a powerful force for healing inside us?
Right. So the self is known for its 8 C's. Have you heard of these?
I think so. Remind me.
Curiosity, compassion, calmness, courage, clarity, confidence, creativity, and connection.
Okay, the 8 C's.
Yeah. And the real power of the 8 C's, I think, is realizing that these aren't skills you have to, learn from scratch. They're seen as inherent qualities of your authentic self. They're always there, always accessible, even when you feel totally fractured. They offer this limitless wellspring of inner wisdom to guide your healing.
So the self uses these qualities to help the parts.
Exactly. The self helps by acknowledging each part, welcoming it, soothing it, appreciating its efforts, even if its strategies aren't helpful anymore. It's about bringing this sense of warmth and acceptance to your whole inner world.
And what makes the self so powerful in this whole process,
Right.
I remember coming across a quote, Dr. Bob Grant said something like, the word psychedelic means mind manifesting, and internal family systems therapy is mind manifesting. Therefore, IFS is a psychedelic therapy. That's quite a statement.
It really is, isn't it? But it speaks to the profound internal exploration that IFS encourages.
Right. Mind manifesting.
Yeah. It's described as a powerfully transformative, evidence-based model of psychotherapy. The aim is really to help you access and heal those deepest parts of your mind. It's about making the unconscious conscious, really seeing what's going on inside.
Okay.
And then from that place of clarity and compassion from the self, you can facilitate real, lasting healing.
Now, for a lot of our listeners, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT,
Yeah.
that's probably a more familiar kind of therapy. How does IFS stack up against, or maybe how does it complement something like CBT?
That's a really common question. Both IFS and CBT, they ultimately want to reduce suffering, help people function better, feel better. They share that basic goal.
Sure.
But they approach negative thoughts quite differently. CBT might focus directly on changing the thought patterns themselves, challenging them, reframing them, almost like finding errors in thinking.
Right, challenging the thought.
Yeah. IFS, though, it asserts that those negative thoughts often come from protective parts, managers, or firefighters who are trying to keep the traumatized parts, the exiles, quiet or under control.
Ah, so the thought is coming from a part with a job to do.
Exactly. So from the IFS perspective, feeling better, the improvements, they happen when those traumatized parts, the exiles, feel heard, validated, legitimate. loved, even. Rather than just trying to shut down the thoughts they cause, it's less about arguing with the thought and more about understanding the part behind the thought and offering it compassion.
The user experiences we found online are really compelling. People talking about huge shifts. But, for someone new to this, maybe it sounds a bit almost too good to be true. Are there like common challenges or maybe initial roadblocks people hit when they first try IFS, even with all these amazing stories?
That's a really important point because, yeah, no therapy is a magic wand. And while the user experiences are incredibly compelling, lots of people reporting tangible positive effects. Like that person on Reddit who said they got more out of the last 8 months than I did in the past 25 years off other styles by mixing IFS with EMDR.
Wow.
Right? People credit it with lifting deep sadness, understanding daily pain, finding healthy relationships, stopping old patterns, building self-love, reduced anxiety, depression, dissociation. The list goes on.
So the potential seems huge.
It does, but finding an IFS provider can be a challenge. It's still relatively niche, growing fast, but niche, so you might face a waiting list.
Okay, availability might be an issue.
It can be, but the core idea is this part's work. It is filtering more into the mainstream. Again, think inside out. It helps make the concept feel more relatable.
That's true.
And what's really crucial for success in IFS, like with pretty much any therapy, is the quality of the relationship between the client and the therapist.
The connection.
Yeah, and having a free choice in the therapy you attend. That therapeutic alliance, that connection, it's just so vital for this kind of deep work.
So who can IFS actually help? Are there specific situations where it's particularly good? Or maybe where it's not the right fit?
Well, it seems to be highly effective for a really wide range of people, individuals, couples, families.
Okay.
Dealing with things like depression, anxiety, panic, phobias, trauma, definitely, substance use, even some physical conditions like rheumatoid arthritis have shown connections.
Interesting. Physical conditions too.
Yeah, because it addresses those underlying internal dynamics, the stress patterns held in the body, perhaps. It has a really broad application.
But are there times it wouldn't be recommended?
Yes. It might not be appropriate for patients dealing with severe mental illnesses that involve active psychosis or paranoia, like schizophrenia.
Why is that?
Well, the whole concept of parts, talking about different voices or aspects inside. For someone experiencing psychosis, that metaphorical language could potentially be unhelpful, maybe even harmful. It might accidentally reinforce existing delusions.
Okay, that makes sense. Need to be careful.
Right, so it's really important to assess if the IFS framework is genuinely going to be helpful for that specific person's situation.
This all makes a lot of sense when we're looking inward at our own parts.
Yeah.
But how does this connect when we zoom out, to the bigger picture of our families and this idea of generational trauma? How do our inner parts link up with the family system we came from?
It connects really beautifully, actually, through the concept of a family system. Think of your family not just as like a group of individuals, but as a living, breathing organism, a system of separate but totally interdependent parts, just like our internal systems.
Okay. So the family is a system, just like our mind is a system.
Exactly. And the goal of any system, whether it's healthy or not, is to maintain homeostasis, balance.
Even in a dysfunctional family.
Especially then, sometimes. Everyone plays a part, takes on a role to keep that dynamic going, whether they realize it or not. It's like this unspoken script everyone follows just to keep the peace, or maybe just to keep the familiar tension going.
This sounds exactly like those common family roles people talk about, like, the hero child or the scapegoat playing their part in the family drama.
Exactly right. Sharon Wegscheider-Cruz identified 6 common roles in dysfunctional family systems that we still see today. You mentioned a couple.
Yeah.
There's the addict or the dependent. That's the person often acting out, maybe feels isolated, lots of self-loathing. Then you have the enabler or the caretaker, sometimes called the queen of denial.
Okay.
They smooth everything over, keep the system running. Often it's the spouse or maybe the oldest child. And the striking thing is how these roles, which maybe started as necessary coping mechanisms in one generation, they can become these subconscious scripts that future generations just live out without even knowing it, influencing everything from careers to relationships until someone consciously looks at it and decides to change the script.
Wow. Okay, who else?
We also have the hero. The hardworking overachiever brings respectability to the family, kind of validates the whole system.
Connecting back to the manager part inside.
Precisely. It's a protective role, seeking approval, seeking safety, often showing up as perfectionism. Then the scapegoat. The one who gets blamed for everything often acts out the family's hidden frustrations. But interestingly, sometimes they're the ones who actually break the cycle because they challenge the rules.
That is interesting. Okay, two more.
Yep. The mascot, the family clown, uses humor to deflect stress. But underneath, they might be struggling, maybe self-medicating, could develop addiction issues themselves to cope.
The funny one with hidden pain?
Could be. And finally, the lost child or the invisible child. They're withdrawn, quiet. Their needs often get overlooked. And this can lead to difficulties later in life, maybe in relationships or making decisions. These roles, once you adopt them, they can become really ingrained patterns.
And these roles, these patterns, they can just get passed down, like creating cycles we might not even be aware of. It's not just about what our parents explicitly told us.
Absolutely. These roles, these patterns, they're often intergenerational, handed down unconsciously. There's that powerful quote, "We repeat what we do not repair."
Yeah, I've heard that.
It really captures it. It's about inheriting these emotional climates, these ways of adapting that become ingrained. They shape our internal parts, our managers, our exiles, without us even realizing where it came from.
So this leads us right into that idea of generational trauma. How does digging into our family history actually help us here? Seeing these cycles, getting a new perspective.
Well, doing some family research like genealogy or maybe creating something called a genogram.
A genogram, what's that?
It's basically a really detailed family tree, but it doesn't just map names and dates. It maps relationships, major life events, behaviors, patterns across generations.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It can be profoundly illuminating. It helps you see the thread piercing through all the generations, as one source put it. You can see the struggles, the experiences, how they influence parenting, and how that all ultimately funneled down into who you are today.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Maybe understanding that your great-grandfather had severe untreated PTSD from, say, the Civil War. That might suddenly shed light on a whole legacy of emotional distance, or maybe abuse or neglect in the family line.
Right, connecting the dots back.
Or uncovering a 100-year-old family secret through adoption records that could suddenly make sense of anxieties or dynamics happening right now. It just provides such crucial context.
I know therapists use genograms sometimes, but I can imagine for a client it might feel a bit invasive or maybe overwhelming at first, especially if you're just starting to talk about your family. What's the real value there?
That's a really common concern, and yes, some clients do feel that way initially. It can bring up a lot, but many therapists find them incredibly valuable.
How so?
It's usually not about diagnosing people on the chart. It's about providing context. Seeing it visually, seeing it laid out on the board, as one therapist said, can create these huge aha moments for clients.
Makes it less abstract.
Exactly. It helps people externalize the patterns, realize, oh, this isn't just me, this is a pattern in my family. It can help you see you're not alone in the struggle. It shifts the perspective from purely individual problems to understanding how the whole family system contributes. And that can be incredibly freeing. It also helps the therapist stay calm and objective, even when things get intense, because they see the bigger picture.
We came across such a powerful personal story from Ruth Dixon. Her mother had struggled with psychiatric issues, and then Ruth's own daughter, Connie, developed very similar anxieties and an eating disorder. At the exact same age Ruth was when her mother had a really severe crisis. It just brought this whole concept home.
Ruth's story is incredibly poignant, isn't it? It really highlights how emotional trauma, if it doesn't get processed, can become like a void that just expands to swallow not just the traumatized person, but also their children and their children's children.
Yeah, it's a heavy thought.
It is. Her mother was caught in a medical system back then that mostly just pathologized her despair, maybe didn't address the deeper distress, possibly made her feel more isolated.
Right.
And Ruth's own healing journey really took off when she realized she needed to understand her mother's story even after her mother had passed, recognizing that her mother was also caught within the confines of our family emotional system.
So she shifted from blame to understanding.
Exactly. From blaming her mother to understanding the systemic influences, the inherited patterns. It's such a powerful reminder that, as one source said, it's not the events themselves that create the issues. It's
Right.
how we and our family relate and react to them that truly determines the impact. It's all about the patterns of response, not just the things that happened.
And this links back perfectly to that key lesson from Bowen family systems theory. Family patterns are not your destiny.
Precisely.
You do have the power to recognize these patterns and then make conscious choices about how you want to respond differently, what kind of relationships you want to build. And that feels like a message of immense hope.
It really is.
So for our listener, hearing all this, what does it mean for you? How can you actually begin to explore your own parts, or maybe the family patterns that might be influencing you? Where do you start on this journey of self-discovery?
Well, a good place to start is just by noticing. Noticing signs of inner conflict within yourself. Is there maybe internalized aggression, shame? Do you find yourself regressing sometimes? Or maybe that relentless perfectionism we talked about?
Okay, noticing the internal signals.
Yeah. Are your thoughts and feelings contradictory? Do you have a really loud inner critic that's constantly undermining you? Or maybe you find yourself procrastinating on things that matter? Or just feeling stuck, indecisive, even about small things?
Right.
These are all really good indicators that your parts might be in conflict. They're basically asking for your attention, asking for a more compassionate approach.
So once you notice these signs, how do you actually engage with these parts? Do you just, sit down and have a chat with them in your head?
Kind of, yeah. You can start by asking yourself some reflective questions, like the ones in that IFS worksheet we looked at. And the key is to approach this with genuine curiosity, not judgment.
Curiosity, okay? Like what questions?
Questions like, what name or label would I give this part? How does it usually show up in my thoughts, my feelings, my body, my behaviors? What does this part genuinely want for me? That's a big one. What's its positive intention, even if its methods seem unhelpful now?
Finding the good intention.
Exactly. And crucially, how can I bring curiosity, compassion, and understanding toward this part? It's really about approaching them with this open-hearted inquiry, like you would approach a friend who's struggling.
And remembering those 8 C's of the self we talked about: curiosity, compassion, calmness, courage, clarity, confidence, creativity, connection. Those are like your internal strengths, right?
Yeah.
Your resources to draw on when you're having this inner dialogue.
Exactly right. They're your internal compass guiding you through this process. And while self-help techniques like journaling about these parts or using guided meditations can be a really powerful start, discussing what comes up with a licensed therapist who's actually trained in IFS can provide so much additional insight and support.
Professional guidance can help deepen it.
Definitely. And it's interesting, even for therapists themselves, doing their own family of origin work, exploring their own parts and patterns, is seen as essential. It helps them become more effective, more able to stay calm and present with their clients, even when things get really emotional. It's this ongoing process of growth, seeing how your own parts and family history might show up in your work or your relationships.
The ultimate message weaving through all of this, it really feels like one of incredible hope, doesn't it? That change, that healing, it is possible. We actually have agency in our own stories.
It truly is. All the sources really point to this. Through understanding, through active work, it's possible to find words where words were absent, as Ruth Dixon put it, to heal from that isolation that can come with transgenerational trauma, and ultimately to find a sense of being fully connected both inside yourself, with all your parts, and in your relationships with others. The future really is full of hope for anyone willing to do this deep, meaningful work. It's absolutely a journey worth taking.
So here's something to consider as we wrap up. How will you begin to explore that intricate connection, the one between your own inner parts and the family patterns that have shaped you? How will you start listening to the stories that are waiting to be heard within your own system?
That wraps up another deep dive. This was a topic that I think truly touched both of us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of internal family systems and those generational patterns. We really hope you found this deep dive as insightful and, thought-provoking as we did preparing it. We really appreciate you spending your time with us today. And if you enjoyed this conversation, we hope you'll consider coming back for more deep dives.
And remember, you can support us if you like. You can like this deep dive, maybe share it with friends or family who you think might benefit from hearing it. And please leave us a comment. We genuinely love hearing from you.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.